You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
You ready?
Showtime.
On May 3rd, summer starts with The Fall Guy.
Let's do it later.
Let's drink a spicy margarita.
Make some bad decisions.
Yes!
Audiences are falling in love with the most entertaining film of the year.
Fall Guy.
Fall Guy?
Fall guy.
That's what the poster said.
See Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt in the movie critics say exists to make you happy.
Trying to make it out?
Nope.
Because I don't either. It's not what I'm into right now.
What are you into?
Talking.
Yeah.
The Fall Guy. Only in theaters May 3rd. Rated PG-13.
Get ready for the greatest roast of all time, the Roast of Tom Brady, a Netflix live event happening May 5th. Hosted by Kevin Hart, the 7-time world champion gets his cleats held to the fire by famous friends and frenemies on an unforgettable night where everything is fair game. Tune in on May 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific time for the Roast of Tom Brady, live only on Netflix.
You feel this nervousness on the phone there?
Sir, I've been trying to make an urgent phone call up there.
I don't think it's something I want to do on an overseas phone.
You gotta make some phone calls. Hang up the phone. Prank caller.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Packernet After Dark. This is the call-in show of the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, if you'd like to participate in the show, please feel free to do so. The phone number here is 608-501-0718. New callers go directly to the front of the line. We don't have any new callers today, but we do have Mr. Craig. Craig, what's going on?
Hey, Ryan, it's Craig from Indiana. The draft is over. Excited about who we drafted this year. A couple unknowns for me. I've been doing some mocks and listening to lots of podcasts, especially yours, about different players. And again, some of these names just jump out of nowhere, but it's kind of exciting. They obviously see something in these guys or they wouldn't pick them. I was always on the bandwagon that I didn't want to waste a draft pick on a wide receiver or tight end. So I'm actually grateful for that. I know if the right one would have fell, I would have been fine, but, certainly I'm okay with not, getting those. So I thought that was good, but, like the majority of our picks. So should be a fun season, should be a competitive season. Every year I'm amazed at how wrong the draft boards can be. I mean, these are supposed to be experts, right? And I know they don't know everything, obviously, but, like Michael Pratt falling to round 7 when some thought, he might be a 3 or a 4 or something. And then, we take Jacob Monk in round 5 and some people didn't even have him, in the draft at all. He'd be an undrafted guy. So it's just, I know there's lots of variables, lots of different things to look at, but, and I can see when you might be off 20 picks or so, or 30, but sometimes they're off 100, which just seems strange, but that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
So, excited for the year, excited to see what they do in camp, and it was really good news about Stokes and also our edge, Kingsley. So that was great news, which I think affected the draft, but hopefully those guys can be healthy and contribute more this year to the Packers. All right, thanks for everything you did during the draft. You guys are crazy to be doing it that long. I think it's awesome. I was in and out a little bit, but thank you for that. I know that's a long stretch, but you guys made it entertaining and insightful, and appreciate your dedication to that. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I'll do it anyways. We really do enjoy doing it. It is a grind. I'm not lying when I say that. And it was significantly harder when it was just me by myself, which it almost was this year. It was going to be me and Cullen because JJ was at the draft and the other guys kind of had their own stream now. So I was glad that we could link up and kind of do it the way we did it again because it's so much more fun when we can all just kind of do it together. But it would suck if all of a sudden everyone's like, nah, we don't really want to watch you do that anymore because it's like, oh, but I kind of want to. So, no, it's fun. I love it. I can't wait to – I mean, next year is going to be different, but I just look forward to continuing to do that. It's such a fun tradition. Yeah, I mean, as far as the picks, it is kind of interesting to even think about. You understand some variability, especially, early. It's usually not that big, but, a 10, 20 pick difference or whatever. You pick a third-round guy in the second round. I'm putting third round in quotes. But, yeah, you look at, like, Hopper, and it was so different. And, there is data to suggest that that's a negative, right? So, essentially, when you apply data to this thing, that the going theory as far as the nerds are concerned is there's no such thing as a steal, but there is such thing as a reach. So in other words, when you look at the consensus board, generally speaking, when teams reach, in other words, it doesn't line up with the consensus board, they took them too early, usually they end up being worse players than they should be for where they were taken. However, when players fall, there's no net benefit. In other words, it ends up being as good of a player as not where they were expected to be, but where they got drafted or worse. And my thought behind that is the consensus board has some value to it, right? As much as I think we overemphasize the consensus board as being the ultimate authority, and we just forget that, no, I mean, these guys have scouting staffs and they have differing opinions, et cetera, et cetera. Generally speaking, there's going to be negatives for a reason, and I think those kind of come through more often than not. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad pick. It just means, generally speaking, that's not great. And I think the reason there's no such thing as a steal is because that's where maybe the consensus board missed something. That's where the people in the media didn't really see maybe a character issue or some other kind of a flaw. So it's kind of unfortunate because there's no positive for a steal and there is a negative for a reach. Anyways, getting that all out of the way, again, that's just, I haven't looked into that myself. That is the consensus among the stat nerd community as far as I understand it. But it's still interesting to think about, like to have such strong conviction in a completely diametrically opposed way to pretty much everybody else is interesting. Like what exactly is it you saw in the guy? Because a lot of this is projection. There's a lot of guys that are very good that are not going to be good in the pros. I was thinking about that when I talked about Caleb Williams. And look, I'm picking on Caleb Williams. Listen, if I had to guess, he's going to be a good quarterback. I just, he's the number one pick, et cetera, et cetera. It was just kind of an example. But, when you look at his specific issues, you could see where you could be successful doing that in college and not in the pros, right? Slow processing. And by slow, I mean, unbelievably fast compared to a normal human being, but maybe not quite fast enough for the NFL because the NFL is just so much faster and all the windows are tighter and everything else. And that's where, as I said on the derailed stream, Justin Fields was an incredible college quarterback and he was a terrible NFL quarterback. And I think that was the difference. And so a lot of this is, we look at really strong college people and sometimes you say, I just don't think they're going to be that good. And likewise, you can kind of do the reverse where you look at a guy's traits and you say, okay, yes, I see some of the negatives, et cetera. We can clean that up. We can work on the tackling. We can do this. It's fundamental type stuff. Beyond that, I'm looking what he is able to do, which is a common refrain among, scouts or whatever, whether or not they hold to it, whether or not it's even a good thing to say, I don't know, but it's something to the effect of tell me what they can do, don't tell me what they can't do or something like that. But again, you look at the strengths, you look at the things they can do that not a lot of other guys that can. And from what I hear, as far as like run and chase linebackers, really fast guys, this guy's near the top of the line. And so the Packers look at the upside and they say, if we can refine the negatives and we can fix some of that, and of course we're going to take a lot off their plate. He's going to be our number 3 linebacker. He probably comes off the field when we're in nickel, which is going to be most of the time. So it'll be, Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker on the field with, an extra safety or corner or something. But in base, he'll come out and he's going to be the run and chase guy. He's not going to be taking on blocks. That'll be the other guy. So everyone's going to be taking a lot off his plate. He's going to have corner help. He's going to have safety help. He's going to have the other 2 linebackers next to him, getting them set, telling them where to go. And the guys up front along the defensive line handling a lot of the fray. So he just needs to run, chase, and bring guys down. And we think that he can do that. If we can clean up the fundamentals, we think he has the processing speed and you know what I mean? So but again, it's all projection because if he can't, and you just look at what he did in college, it's like, not very good. So, I mean, all of these are gambles. They really are. And I'm sure the Packers know the downside and they know that if he doesn't clean that stuff up, he's probably going to be a horrific NFL football player. It's all kind of a risk. Outside the top 10 picks or so, and even sort of throughout the first round, once you get past that, that's when the game really starts. That's when you start looking at traits and saying, which traits do I want to bet on? This guy can do this and he can't do that. I think I can coach that. You know, it's not hard in the top 10 to pick guys that have everything. There's nothing really to bet on, to guess on, to project. Just take them. They're perfect. They're perfect human beings that do everything. The game starts later. And so we'll see. We'll see what, again, I got to dig back in. I'm going to be working on that today. By the way, I don't think there's going to be a podcast for tomorrow. I'm going to start the process of going back and kind of watching these guys. And there's also some administrative stuff I got to get done. Just podcast related stuff, taxes, and I got to pay the guys. I'm behind on that and everything else that I've been behind the eight ball on. I got to get kind of caught up. So just a heads up.
Ryan, what's up? Kyle from Madison. How are you?
Good.
So I wonder if you could answer a question for me. So I've been hearing this term. I remember hearing it last year with Jaden Reed, and I heard it, I think it was in Gutekunst's post game about Hopper. And he said last year with Reed, I think it was pretty much the same sentence. They asked him about speed and not hitting the RAS score with Reed last year and Hopper this year. And he said, well, actually, we had him at this speed. Or we had Hopper higher at this speed. And I'm just wondering, like, what is he referring to? Like, are they talking about it like their own stopwatch time? Because I know you love that after your rant last week about these guys in the stands of the combine with the stopwatches. Is that what he's talking about? Or is he talking about, I mean, did they have a separate private pro day and they just got a different time on the watch? Or how is it sometimes when the Packers draft these guys that they can have them, in quotes, at a better time than what, you know, is calculated in the easily accessible RAS score that we've been looking at? Just curious if you had any insight on that, because I found that pretty interesting, because it's definitely, you know, the times that I think they have matter changing the RAS score, changing kind of the threshold picture a little bit. Not to get into that whole argument again, but it is interesting, like, that if they do covet their times, you know, over other times. Just trying to figure out how that works. Anyway, if you had any insight there, that would be really cool. And my second question is, what do you think of Kailyn King? That's an interesting pick, right? Somebody said he was the top corner in Dane Brugler's 2024 mock draft immediately following the 2023 draft. You know, he'll put one out here probably next 2 weeks. It was like the first mock draft he did last year, and King was the top corner, or one of the top corners, and then fell off this year. So, you know, if he does end up being good, it's yet again one of those examples where the Packers like the previous year so much more than this one. Obviously, they only liked it so much, they took him with their last pick, but I think that's interesting, and I kind of like that idea of a guy who's probably not super happy about that situation. Clearly, he would have heard where he was ranked on some of those mock drafts. So there's a guy with some motivation that actually I think has a pretty good chance of sticking on the roster. So we'll see, you know, what he looks like. But anyway, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, so the Kailyn King thing is certainly interesting. And, you know, it's not that obviously the Packers don't like the fact that he dropped off. I just think that they're willing to bet on the 2 years ago thing, you know, more so than maybe other teams. So they end up with a bunch of them. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It sounds like he was sort of considered one of the top guys. I mean, we've seen Sauce Gardner tweet about him. I've seen, I forget which Packer it was talking about him. I mean, he's a well-known commodity. Corners know him, corners respect him, and that's a pretty cool thing. But I think the biggest critique, and we've talked about it a couple times now, is, you know, the fact that he was sort of the number 2 corner there, really locked it down, and then when he became the number 1 guy this year, he really fell off. And, you know, so that's kind of the concern. But, you know, again, it's the 7th round, almost the last pick in the whole draft. Packers figure, why not? You know, I mean, even if you're covering number 2 guys, it's the stuff he was doing to be considered the top corner in basically college football. You got to be somewhat talented, even against number 2 guys. These kids are very interested in talking to me every second. So there's something there, right? And I'm sure they have I shouldn't say low expectations, but they're not pushing all the chips in on this guy, right? They didn't take him in the second or third round. They took him with their final pick in the 7th round. But they figure, you know what? He's not going to start, probably, but let's get him in here. Let's let him compete. Let's put him next to Jair. Let's put him across from, Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs, and let's just see what this guy can do. Let's take a little bit of the pressure off him, right? He became the top guy at Penn State. All eyes on him. He's, like you said, top of all the mock drafts and everything. Let's just let him come in here, real casual. Let's let Hafley get his hands on him, and let's see if we can turn this guy into a freaking dog. You know what I mean? Who knows? Maybe he can play in the slot. I saw somebody was showing that today, a couple of his slot reps, and he looked really good. Maybe he can compete for that spot, or maybe he can be a boundary guy. But let's not put the pressure on him of being, you need to come in and be our number one corner. No, Jair's got that, and we got Stokes on the other side, and we got Valentine and Ballantyne already here. All I want you to do is come in here and learn. Don't worry about the starting job. We're not gonna, Gutekunst isn't gonna cut a 7th round pick. So you're going to get at least a year. You come in, you fight, you battle. Maybe you make the team. Maybe you go on the practice squad, whatever. But you're going to be here, and we'll just see what happens. And I'm fine with that, And again, I think the Packers take that approach with most picks, even though fans want instant impact. I think for a lot of these guys, it's just come in and just learn. All right, that's it. That's all I want you to do. Come in and learn. Don't worry about, whether or not you're going to make the team or whether or not you're going to be the top dog or any of that kind of stuff. Just make sure you work hard, follow instructions, and if, we believe that if you will follow our instructions and do what we say, we can turn you into something special, and that's all we're asking from you. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I saw, I think it was Christian Watson's dad on social media. That guy's funny, man. He's so positive. I genuinely hope Christian doesn't end up going to another team anytime soon because I'm assuming he's going to follow his kid, but maybe he'll stay a Packer fan. I don't know. But he did the film study on Kailyn King, and he's like, film study complete. He's Casey Hayward Jr. It's like, oh, okay, great. That's great news. I'm so excited to hear that he's one of the better corners we've had over the last 20 years. But it is a good example of, guys that just, they have those attributes. There's plenty of flaws. There's plenty of reasons, whether it's their speed or height or weight or bad season or whatever the case may be, but they can play football. So we'll see. What was the first thing you mentioned? Oh, the timing. So I don't know what his exact comments were. I do know that sometimes they say, like, we clocked him at a different time. And again, I don't know. So a lot of these guys, for example, they'll come in for private workouts. Other times they might be talking about the stopwatch thing. That would be stupid. But they may also do it differently. In other words, whether or not they have a stopwatch, they may be recording it and whatnot, and you have a different start point and end point or whatever. I don't know exactly how that would work. But I think the most important thing is the speed that they watch when they watch the film. And I would assume they have the technology to actually be able to see miles per hour on the field, to be able to track that. I know there are companies that can track that. Why in the world NFL teams wouldn't have that, I don't know. So I think they have access to that level of data. And if you've got a linebacker and you can track, from sideline to sideline how fast these guys move, and you clock him at, some of the fastest, that's really what matters. So you come out and run a 40 time that's a little bit slower, I don't give a crap about how you did on the 40 time. So I'm giving them a lot of credit that they have all this technology, they use all that technology and everything else. For all I know, though, I don't know. They're just using the old eye test or something, which would be eye test and stopwatches, which would be absolutely stupid. But who knows? Anyways, why don't we take our first break? We'll be right back to hear from Trevor in Virginia. We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built for us.
Have you ever experienced turbulence on a flight and wondered why?
And you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
No, everything's PG.
Maybe you've sat on the tarmac for hours wondering why your plane isn't moving.
Well, we're outside here. They're saying the ramp is closed. They won't let us park because of Air Force One.
Listen in on the conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers on the Air Traffic Out of Control podcast.
512 Whiskey declaring an emergency. There's smoke in the cabin. I need to make a landing right now on 31 left.
We have the most interesting, wild, and funny ATC recordings you will ever hear. Check out Air Traffic Out of Control wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Hey, Ryan, Trevor in Virginia.
Hey.
Just after the draft, I haven't done any research to confirm this or not, but just the way I feel, it seems to me like Gutekunst has a very clear draft strategy. In the top 3 rounds, he likes to just trade back a few picks and pick up those extra 5th, 6th, 7th round picks.
Yeah.
We came with 11. At one point, we were up to 13 or 14 picks in this draft because of the trade backs, and he likes to trade back and get those late picks, and it's not even to stick and pick with all those. Then what I see is, we have so many hits on late round guys. It's not everybody, but nobody's everybody. But I think we have a much more late round hits than most teams. And I think it's because Gutekunst accumulates all this late draft capital so that when it is the 5th round, the 6th round, he'll trade up 20 picks to get the guy they want. Because I think they're looking and they're like, we have a diamond in the rough here, and we're going to wait till we can take him. And then he has all this capital to trade up to get that guy that he wants. And we still have plenty of picks. We're not trading up and then, we only have 5, 6 picks. We're trading back to accumulate more and then trading up to hit the guys we want in those late rounds. And maybe sometimes it's at a detriment because, the 3rd round we're not the best in. So sometimes maybe it's at a detriment in those early rounds. But the late round guys we hit, I just think seems like Goote's strategy to me, and I think it's been working out really well. And I'm just, everybody thinks they have a great draft class right now, right? So we'll see. But I think we probably have another really solid draft here. It was hilarious. I saw something on social media, new topic here, but it was about the Bears draft, and it was tell me the Bears didn't have a great draft, and it listed out their picks, and their 4th round pick, it literally said the pick number, and then it said Keenan Allen. It's no, you didn't draft Keenan Allen because you traded the pick away. That doesn't count towards your draft for the year. And it had Montez Sweat on it. And everybody they traded for on there was oh yeah, for this pick we got this play. It's you're so dumb to post this. You guys had a terrible draft. When Caleb Williams is climbing in the stadium of an NFL stadium to cry with his mother, we'll see how happy you are now. So anyway. Go back, go.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to do is kind of just take that into account. Okay, fine, you got these guys. But then actually look at it, because the problem is everybody just looks at the player. Oh, at this pick you got Montez Sweat. With this pick you got... Okay, let's also take into account the age and the contract. I mean, people throw an absolute fit if you draft a 24-year-old. The Bears apparently drafted a 31-year-old with a very high contract that only lasts 1 year. You want to include it, let's include it. That's what you did? Okay, well, that's stupid. Anyways, no, I think you're exactly right. I think that is a big part of it. Not that that's, you go into it saying we have to trade back, but I think they really want to in the early rounds. It looks like they've done it the last 2 years in the 2nd round. And there's a lot of reason for it. Again, number one, if you can trade back, if you've got 3 guys or 5 guys or 10 guys on your board on that tier that you're comfortable with, and you could trade back 5, 6 spots and still get that guy, that gives you a lot. I mean, trading back 5 spots in the 2nd round is a lot of ammo for the 6th and 7th round or 5th round or whatever. And so, yeah, it gives you that ability when things start to thin out. Later on, there's less and less guys you're even interested in. I mean, there are times when there are less guys on their board than there are picks, and you're just kind of hoping you have some by the time you get to the 7th round. Because obviously everybody has different boards and different guys that they like, but it gets a little dicey, and you're already, I mentioned it before, the NIL thing means less people are coming in, especially later round guys. I mean, if you're making some money in college, you go to the pros, you're going to be making less money because you're getting these piddly little 7th round contracts or possibly going undrafted free agent when, back in your hometown, you're Mr. Hot Stuff. You're the second, what was that? The one NIL for the Green Wave or something fund where they keep those guys. I mean, how many of those guys are going to go on to be NFL pros? I mean, granted, if you're the quarterback, maybe, but a lot of these guys they're making decent money. I mean, even if it's like $100,000 NIL deal or something, why wouldn't I stay another year? $100,000. I'm in college, finish my degree or whatever the case is. I'm not going to the pros right now. So it thins out, and you're already seeing a lot of teams taking less undrafted free agents. The Packers have done it. I think the Eagles said that they're essentially their plan is to just wait for guys to get cut off of other teams because the pool is already soaked up, and they're not even going to bother. And so they're just going to leave empty spots on their roster, wait for other teams to cut guys that they liked, and go grab them. So, again, for the sake of the later rounds, because things are getting so dicey, I mean, anyways, it's a good strategy, but now with less and less talent that you like in the later rounds, it's very important that you have the ability to move up and snag those guys. And so it makes sense to do that stuff. My only concern is Gutekunst's obsession with having like 4 7th-round picks every year. If this really does start to thin out, you need to make sure you can move up with those picks. Otherwise, it's just going to become less and less valuable.
Hey, Ryan, it's Draft Hobbyist here. Talk about the draft,
Let's see if that clears up at some point.
First round talent. No.
Drew and Ashwaubenon, why don't you give me a call back, man? Kind of breaking up a little bit. Kyle, what's up?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hey.
Kyle from Madison. The draft is, I think after, 40 years of Packer fandom, and with how the draft has become a much different animal this last 15 years, definitely the more time you spend kind of researching players and doing mock drafts and familiarizing yourself with all these options and all these ingredients, so to speak, out there, the more fun the draft is. But also, the more heartbreaking it inevitably is. Because the Packers, they might take 1 or 2 of your guys, but most likely they're going to take none of them. And so, on the one hand, it's more fun the more familiar you are, but again, it's a little more painful, at least in the short term, because everybody falls in love with players. We all do it, right?
Exactly.
But this is the time of year where Packer fans enter my top 3 most annoying fans to me, right with the Vikings and Bears, because it's every year with friends, coworkers, and family, and perfect strangers on social media. The hot takes are just garbage because it's impossible to know. If everybody's garbage, that's a crappy pick, blah, blah, blah. And it's all just because they weren't on Mel Kiper's big board.
Right.
And on their list. And none of us know how this will work out, obviously. But that kind of take over and over and over and over, you didn't like the pick, so now you got to go on all your freaking soapboxes online and scream at the top of your lungs in all caps that Good is garbage and everybody's garbage and oh my God, it's I hate it. I hate that, and I think every fan base does it. For some reason, the Packers, it's just dude, can you not watch, no general manager is perfect, but the Etch-a-Sketch nature of how short-term everybody's memory is, and then how it's the media cycle is 10 minutes long, and draft development doesn't cater to that. It doesn't matter. It takes what it takes to develop a guy or not. It's so frustrating because nobody knows. I'm so sick of it. I'm just so sick of everybody telling me how everybody's garbage all the time because it's not Cooper DeJean or whatever. And it's just every year like that. I feel like it's just getting worse, So I know that's not most of you, but I just needed a vent because it's today everybody's kind of comparing notes. And it's really annoying to me. Everybody relax, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a video clip of somebody basically going over that. And look, it's really common sense, but essentially the idea was, now everybody loves the Eagles draft because they follow the consensus board so closely, so everybody's reaction is, they've done it again. Listen, the easiest thing in the world, if you wanted to get an A grade in a draft, would be just go find who's falling on the consensus board, draft them, and you're going to get called a genius. The problem is, if that's the extent of your ability, you shouldn't be paid as a GM. We could have a freaking robot or a child do that. We expect our GM to be better than that. So if you really think about it, if they did exactly what the consensus board said was right, we're not getting what we paid for. We're not getting a good GM. You expect your GM to deviate not just grab the steals. That doesn't even make any sense. How can you pay a guy to grab the... You can't force steals to happen. You can't force steals to fall to you. And then if they do, you're just the guy that grabs all the people that were overrated that nobody actually wants. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be a winning strategy. So the question is, are these guys going to pan out? Is Tyron Hopper? It's really just we need to sit back and wait and see how the class performs. Now, you can have complaints, things to the... And it can't necessarily be an all-in attack. It's just sort of I'm slightly concerned about. Because who knows how the board fell? There's plenty of times, we talked about it in the past about wide receiver, where the Packers consistently wanted and tried to get wide receiver, but the board just didn't fall the way that they wanted it to. But if you want to look at it and go, I'm a little concerned about the overemphasis of lesser valued positions. I'm a little concerned about the lack of investment in corner and edge. And maybe they disagree, that's fine, but that's my assessment of things, and that's my concern. We'll see how it pans out. And I have those concerns. But I think the good thing, and this is what a lot of fans do, I understand some fans are miserable and refuse, but the good thing is, yes, you fall in love with prospects, and then the Packers don't do it and you get miserable. But you know what the next phase of the process is? You fall in love with the guys the Packers drafted. And it's not that hard. Because with almost everybody, at some point you can start to, as I was talking about in this process, see the vision, right? It's just a question of going back and seeing the vision. I watched Tyron Hopper once, maybe a month ago. And he was one of the first guys I think I watched, and I went through and I read my comments to you. It was something, I don't even remember. It was generally wasn't a fan, but there was something in there. But man, if you spend a lot of time really watching, and instead of just kind of cruising real fast through one game and saying, I don't really get it, really honing in, really watching, really trying hard to find what is it that the Packers wanted, as though you're searching for treasure. What the heck was it that they saw? You're going to find it. Now, some people don't want to do that. They're going to keep listening to the experts say that the Packers made a mistake and they shouldn't have done it, and it's just going to make them more and more and more pissed. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying the Packers are right, but you can't... These people are not doing their homework. None of these national guys are spending the time really watching any of these prospects because they don't have the time to do it. I'm not going to sit back and watch every prospect that was drafted to fully appreciate everybody's draft board. I'm not doing that. But as a Packers content creator and as a Packers fan, am I going to watch the Packers guys? Heck yeah, I am. And am I going to watch highlights because I want to kind of see like what is the peak? What is it we're looking for? Yes, I am. Now, I'm going to stay grounded. Some people are going all in. This guy's going to be a stud. This guy's going to be Casey Hayward, whatever. I'm not doing that. And I'm still going to be the guy that doesn't trust 7th round picks. But I'm going to at least give them the opportunity to prove that it was the right decision before I condemn a draft class that hasn't even stepped foot on the field. Because the fact of the matter is there's probably picks you liked that are going to suck and picks that you didn't like that are going to be good. So it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've always said fan how you want to fan, but I just don't understand at this point when we don't know how it's going to pan out, being mad about things when we don't know that it's actually going to be bad. It doesn't make sense. What if Hopper is like the best pick in this entire class? Then what a waste of freaking energy it's been for everybody to be mad about it because it didn't line up with somebody's stupid board. Again, I will continue to remind everybody, look at Jayden Reed. That was a horrific pick. I never watched Jayden Reed. You know why? Because he wasn't in the consensus top 100. I think he ended there, but when I put the board together, he wasn't there. And then I asked people, who should I watch? And I watched probably 20, 30 more guys. Jayden Reed was not one of them. I watched probably 130 prospects last year. I never once watched Jayden Reed. We took him in the 2nd round with really, really good football players still available. Wide receivers way above Jayden Reed on the board. Really good tight ends available. And we took Jayden Reed, and pretty much everybody was pissed. And you know what I did? On the stream, I went back and started watching him, and I was like, holy crap, this guy actually looks really good. And I started to get into it. Now, is that me fanning and being, maybe it is, maybe, I don't know. But you know what? That reach of a pick for Jayden Reed in the 2nd round when there was other more important needs and other more guys higher on consensus boards that were still there was maybe the best pick we made last year. And Dontavian Wicks, who I watched very briefly and hated, was also in the running for best pick, especially when you look at the value of where he was taken. So who gives a crap what other people think or your preconceived notions or where they landed on the consensus board? Who gives a crap? It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Let it go. We start over. We hit refresh, right? So we went through it in the draft prior to the draft, and we fell in love with certain prospects. Now the draft happened. You purge everything you knew before, you start over, and you look at these guys. And if you watch them over and over and over, and you listen to what people who like the prospects have to say about the prospects, and you still just can't get into it, fine. But still give them the opportunity to go freaking play football and see how it turns out. But all right, let's take our final break. We'll come back and hear from Garrett in Southern Illinois.
Hey, Ryan, it's Garrett from Southern Illinois.
What's up?
We've all had time to digest this weekend's NFL draft, and I just have a few questions I wanted to run by you. Number one, who do you think had the best draft overall that just really pops? Who had the worst draft?
Bears.
And why? And third question, who wore more hair product, Mel Kiper or Clayton? So my comments for this weekend would be regarding...
Well, I haven't gone through all 32 teams. I do respect what the Steelers did. They seem to be the consensus top team. Let me just take a gander here real quick. So the Cardinals, they got... Marvin Harrison, Darius Robinson, Max Melton, Trey Benson. I mean, if we're just going off of names, that's not terrible. I mean, I wasn't as high on Max Melton as a lot of people. I was definitely not as high on Darius Robinson, although, again, hadn't really considered him to the interior. Obviously, Marvin Harrison is solid. Then they get Trey Benson, maybe the best running back in the class, in the third round. Pick up an interior offensive lineman also in the third. Good Lord, they had a lot of third-round picks. Tip Riemann, tight end in the third round. Elijah Jones, cornerback out of Boston College, who I really liked, in the third round. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks in the top 100. And then at pick 104, Dadrian Taylor Demerson. Now, you know, again, you'd have to kind of look at how they acquired all these picks. If they got it from, I mean, even if you got it from trading, you know, you get half credit for making the right decision. Can't give you full credit if it's from being garbage. But, I mean, listen, you're a bad team. You prioritize maximizing your picks. You did a fantastic job. I don't think I've ever seen 7 picks in the top 100, 8 picks basically in the top 100 with pick 104 here, and then just really hammering, I mean, not necessarily the most premium positions, but positions in need. You know, again, Marvin Harrison, you get Max Melton at corner, top running back Trey Benson, debatably. I think that's pretty solid. And then let's see, Xavier Thomas, Christian Jones, Jaden Davis, Tawan Palmer. It's pretty solid. I'm not going to go through all of them, but yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's been getting a lot of praise. If I had to do NFC North, I mean, call me biased, I would say it's the Packers, largely because of the trading. Now, if you don't give the Packers credit for having more picks, which I think is somewhat unfair, and if you don't include the horrific trades done, I think you could make a case for the Detroit Lions or even Minnesota possibly, but probably the Lions, especially if you're not given credit for having more picks, because I think the Lions had less picks than the Vikings.
I think they got themselves a steal at linebacker who could be a defensive player of the year type candidate if Hapley plays his cards right and uses him in a certain way. I think Green Bay got themselves a really good safety in Bullard. That was who I had picked in my draft. And the rest of the guys, I'm kind of on the fence. I really, really like Oladapo. But the rest of the guys, I'm just kind of lukewarm on. And it's going to take some time to watch some film, let it play out through OTAs and just see who really stands out, and training camp before I really make any calls on the rest of the guys. So it really seemed like it was a lot more depth than anything else. But one thing I will say regarding the questions I started off with, my opinion of Atlanta picking Penix, and they plan on sitting him, dude, they would have been a lot better picking the best player available and drafting someone like Pratt, in the 6th round, letting him sit for 3 years behind Cousins. And I think they'd have a better player than Penix and a younger player. Just my opinion. Garrett, I'm out.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out with Penix. I mean, I don't like because I don't want teams getting better, but I like from a purely NFL standpoint that a team smartened up and decided to do the right thing, which is we have a quarterback that can win now. We're going to draft a quarterback and let him sit and learn behind a good quarterback, and we'll get him good coaching, et cetera, et cetera. Whether or not this is the right pick, I don't know, right? Because, again, they say 4 to 5 years. It might be 3 years, like we did with Jordan Love, in which case he's 27, which isn't the greatest, but whatever. You got him for 10 to 15 years at that point. I think if I had to guess, I'd say you're right. I mean, I was low on Penix to begin with. I think getting a guy like Nix would have been incredible. Otherwise, you're right. Wait for a guy like Pratt. And, what a great guy with some great tools to be able to sit and learn behind a guy like Cousins. I think, and then you could have loaded up at other positions. And, and that's the other thing. You have time. If you're talking about a 4 to 5 year window, you don't need a guy today. Again, 2 to 3 years is plenty. So there's nothing wrong with taking Pratt. And if it's not working, then take another swing. But if it is working, then you're freaking set. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to trash him for taking the wrong guy until we know it's the wrong guy. But it does seem a little disappointing that it's like you picked the one guy of all the people that you could have picked and just waited. JJ, Nix, Pratt, whatever. You took the one guy that it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But it might be a great decision. We'll have to see.
Ryan, I'd like to question a decision that Goody made. And that is his first pick was a tackle that I hadn't even mocked on my picks. And I didn't do that many. I may have only done like 6. But I did not have Morgan. And I wanted to ask, go back and every single draft pick that Goody has taken since he's been GM that's been an offensive lineman, and you rate him whether being pass or fail or A, B, C, D, or F, however you want to rate it. I really would like to know just how well is he grading out on his offensive line draft picks. Because Tom, of course, I would give Tom an A, but I'd give Royce Newman an F. So I was just wondering if you could just combine them all and give us your analysis on where does Goody really come down on how well he picks offensive linemen. I'm out.
Well, first of all, I think where they get picked is massively important, right? I would not give Royce an F because I had no expectation, really. I shouldn't say no expectation. He was a 4th round pick, but I don't know, maybe a D or something because he's bad, or I'd hate to give him a C, but anyways, 2023, I don't think he went at all, and every other year has been 3 offensive linemen, including this year. So if we go back to 2022, it's a little early. Sean Ryan, so far, that's a 3rd round pick. That's relatively early. He looks bad. That's a D. We'll see, though. He has shown improvement, and if he could still start this year, but as of right now, he's a D. Zach Tom, being one of the top tackles in the NFL, top right tackles or whatever, as a 4th round pick is an A+. I mean, A++, extra credit, whatever. Rasheed Walker being a starting left tackle in the 7th round is stupid. That's a 200 out of 100. That's unfreaking believable. Josh Myers in the second round, I would have given probably a B prior to last year. We're trending in the direction of a D because of what happened last year, and if he doesn't make the team, that's pretty rough. Royce Newman again, 4th round pick, I guess a D, I don't know. Cole Van Lanen in the 6th, I just call it a C because I have no expectations. John Runyon in the 6th round, I would go I know last year wasn't great, but just from the value we've gotten already is an A. I mean, getting a 6th round pick to be a pretty high quality starter for like 3 years and then have one kind of down year last year. And then Stepniak and Hansen, again, they're 6th round picks. We didn't get anything out of it. I don't really expect anything out of that. And then Elton Jenkins in 2019. It's somewhere between an A and a B. I don't really know. Again, he had an injury, and it seems like it's kind of been tripping him up a little bit. He's at least a B. And then before that, we had Cole Madison in the 5th round, and I think that's it. And he didn't really produce anything, so I don't know. I don't know. Overall, I mean, I don't see this as a bad thing in any way. I mean, we've mostly gotten late round guys, and many of them have started, which is incredible. Of the early round guys, I think it's just Elton Jenkins and Josh Myers, if I'm not mistaken, outside of Jordan Morgan. Elton Jenkins, I think, was a big hit. Josh Myers was a decent player who really struggled, but I think is going to be given an opportunity to kind of pick up his crap and get back to what he was. Which even then, we're kind of split. I mean, I'm in favor of keeping Josh Myers. I know a lot of people are not. Being a good pass blocker, not a good run blocker is not acceptable for a lot of people. I understand that, and I don't have any issue with continuing to bring in talent to see if they can supplant him. I'm not of the opinion he needs to just be gotten rid of. So I don't have an issue with the offensive line. In fact, I mean, it's been a running joke forever. Whenever you get a Zach Tom and everyone's like, oh, they did it again. The freaking Packers always with their offensive linemen. I mean, we have a 4th round pick and a 7th round pick as starting tackles in the NFL right now. That is absurd. And Gutekunst did both of those guys. In fact, he drafted our entire offensive line, which is a good offensive line. So it's hard to say he's bad at it. I guess that's where I would stand.
Hey, Ryan, Steve Alaska.
Hey.
Figured I'd take myself a moment here while I'm sitting on my trailer because I start selling barbecue and sandwiches and all that stuff this coming Friday. We got to get everything going. But I wanted to come in and make my little mention on what I thought about the draft. I'm happy with the way that it went. I like the players that we got. When I look at them, I see the Packers trying to not so much go out and get all the flash and bang. That's, I know that's what everybody wants to see in a draft. You get all the big flashy players. Those are the players that get the A's. But it seemed to me that we were building a foundation. We already proved last year that we have the ability as a team, as a core, to do what we need to do. We've revamped that core a little bit with, Josh Jacobs and the safety pick. I can't remember his name right now. Pickup. But it looked to me like he's setting the team for a longer future and not worrying about, hey, we're going to get a guy and we're going to win a Super Bowl this year. I never understood that mentality. Never understood that thought process. Rookies. When was the last time a rookie was the key contributing factor to a team winning a Super Bowl? I can't remember one ever. So I'm really happy with the picks that were made. I'm glad that we did grab a quarterback. I know 7th round, people are going to say it doesn't matter, 7th rounder, so nobody's going to care about him. But I've talked to it. I think there's value in having that player. I think there's value in looking into having depth in your quarterback room. I don't understand the thought process that the quarterback is the most important player on your team, but you don't try to develop any depth at the position. It never made any sense to me. Your quarterback goes down with a banged thumb because he hits his thumb on a helmet and he's out for 2 weeks. But we're just going to mark those up as 2 losses? No, you need to have a backup guy who can come in and 500, split it. Keep us going while we're waiting for our starter to come back. So I'm happy we got that. Plus, I want to see if I'm right. And in 3 years, we trade him away and get ourselves maybe a 5th round or a 4th or a 3rd round pick or something for him because trained up in the Packer system. People are liking that. Atlanta admitted rollout that they were working in the idea of the Packer system. That's why, they got, Kirk Cousins, and then they went out and drafted a guy. So, I want to see how it goes. Now we just get to wait and see what develops. I want to see our second and third year players make their jumps that they need to make. And, I'm going to get back to it, man. I got sandwiches to make, man. I got money to make. I got bills to pay. Go Pack. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback thing does make a lot of sense because if you think about it, it's like, well, you draft and develop a quarterback, and that's cool. The problem is that's the one position that'll never play. And the only time he plays is when he gets hurt, and he's probably not good enough to win anyways. And if he is good enough to win, then you're not going to be able to keep him because he's going to get taken away. But that's really not the worst thing if you have a continual plan of doing this regularly, because essentially you get a guy that's just good enough to win. I mean, if your quarterback's done, you're probably done. But if you need him to fill in for a week or two and be able to do it, and you got a guy that can do that, well, that's not only fantastic because it's going to help you stay on track and possibly win a Super Bowl, but when teams come a-calling, cha-ching, right? Oh, it sucks we lost him. I know, but we got more guys in the pipeline ready to rock and roll. So I think that's kind of the thought process behind continually drafting and developing these guys. Jordan has just been healthy so far, so we haven't had a real chance to look at him, which is fine because I doubt anybody's ready to rock and roll today. But it'll be interesting to see these two guys battle it out and see if we can finally get one of those guys that is good enough to essentially be, tradable. Yeah, I'm excited, ready to rock and roll. I think I'm going to get started right now, actually. I'm going to start from the back of the draft. So I will start with King, the cornerback. I'm not going to do undrafted free agents at this point in time. I want to get through the draft class. But that's what I'm going to do. And I'll let you know how it goes. You guys have a good rest of your night. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.